Today we're looking at Noodler's Bulletproof Black. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, as the name says it, Noodler's Bulletproof Black is a black ink. Before we get to the writing sample, let's take a look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography. Now, I do the chromatography the first time the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down, I dunk it into water for 10 to 15 seconds, and I watch it rise up. And we see a very dark black line here, and then gray moving up, which means if you get it wet immediately after it's down, it's going to move. It hasn't had time to bond with the page. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into the water. And what we see is that a great deal of it completely stays in place. It's ready to not move after 10 minutes. That's great. There's still some moving, but it doesn't have its full permanence and bond with the paper yet. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink is going to hold up on the page, and more importantly, how difficult it may be to clean out of the pens. Now, the smear is let dry for 3 days before I test it. And what we see on the highlighter is it holds perfectly. No reactivation, no moving, nothing. If you don't have to highlight immediately after you take your notes, this is perfect. And even still, if you let it have 10 minutes or more, it should be able to hold on perfectly fine. Now, when we're looking at the paper, we see that water seems like it moved it, and it didn't. That was me actually trying to get it off the page because it's known for being so resistant. The same thing happened on the flush. The flush isn't moving it at all. That's me actually scrubbing just a little bit to see if I can get it to move. Bleach had the same result. Nothing. This is truly a permanent ink, which is great for those that like to do art with the ink, with fountain pen ink, because if you let it dry, especially for a couple days, it is not going to budge, and it is fantastic. Now, this is a bell curve, or a normal distribution. For the 365 inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, and the realm of normal goes from 2.1 to 2.9. Noodler's Bernanke Black has a viscosity of 1.92, which was kind of surprising to me. I thought it was going to be a thicker ink, and it's not. It's actually a more flowing ink, which took me completely by surprise because of some of the pens it works so well with. This bell curve is for dry time, and for the 365 inks I've tested, I've found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with normal being the range from 13 to 21 seconds. And Noodler's Bulletproof Black has an average dry time of 11 seconds, making it a faster drying ink. The same dry time that we got with Noodler's Bernanke Black. I'm going that one a couple of times apparently, but shocking. It's drying as fast as what is advertised as one of his fast dry inks. Now, how do I find my average dry time? I use my writing samples. I use the extra fine and the medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper, and I average those 6 dry times. Now, let's take a look at the writing sample. I have this ink in bottle form. In fact, this is my 4th bottle, and if I put my finger on where it is, I have about that much left in my 4th bottle of this ink. This is a mainstay ink for many people, and it has truly earned its place there. To keep my writing samples uniform and consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub. I use a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's look at Clairefontaine. No bleed, no ghosting. With the 1.1, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. It's black. It looks a little darker. It's just the thinner line on the extra fine. That gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, and 6 seconds to dry. On the medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. I feel like that comes out almost like I'm singing it a little bit. 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby looks like it should be able to give us some shade. We're just not getting it in the writing itself. It's the slightest difference from far left to far right in both the extra fine and the medium. Now on a smear, I could recover that. It's one of the reasons I use so much of this ink.
Looking at Tomoe River, we have no bleeding. We have ghosting. It's Tomoe River. With the 1.1, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. We do get some shading. It went a little lighter in spots, a little darker in spots. I'm not really a fan of shading black ink, but I like this ink. Obviously, I'm on bottle number 4. Looking at the extra fine, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, and 13 seconds to dry. I'll take it because it's bulletproof. Now, I'm going to go ahead and throw that out there at people at this point. Not necessarily for art. If you're going to do this for art and do watercolor painting over, really test that paper with this ink. That's one of the reasons I use this ink up so much, is inking artwork. And it just has to really get time to settle in. I like to get, a lot of inks, like an India ink, you can give it a 24 hours. I like to give it 3 to 5 days to really be set. With the medium, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 19 seconds to dry. No real color variation to speak of in the scrubbies. And the smear I would not be able to save. Looking at Rhodia paper, we get no bleeding, no ghosting. With the 1.1, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. On the extra fine, same story. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 7 seconds to dry. With the medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 11 seconds. But when we look down at the scrubbies, it looks like we should get a little bit of color variation in the medium. We didn't, but it looks like we should. But here's the thing that happens. I was taking my notes with the Nemosine Singularity, and it's definitely lighter. Now, this is something I've known from just doing different artwork with this ink, that you can control how blackest of black or not so black this ink can go down by how wet you put this down. Put this down with a brush, very black, very long time to dry then. You could recover this if you smeared it. Now, this ink's supposed to do good on cheap paper, so I put a few extra writing samples in here to go ahead and give it the cheap paper challenge. We have Moleskine. We have no bleed. We have no ghosting. No bleed, no ghosting. Now, this was only with the fine. I wrote the top with the medium. We have no bleed, no ghosting. On Moleskine. Way to go. Moleskine, you got a friend in Noodler's Black. Moleskine should be handing a bottle of this ink to every fountain pen user to get them to use their notebooks. Okay, with the medium, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. We don't even get spread. We don't get feathering. None of it. This is incredibly well behaved on this paper. And this was a new notebook. With the extra fine, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. But it worked. I think it's one of the only inks that ever worked for me. I don't even think the X Feather actually did this well. We get nothing for color variation in a scrubby, and on the smear, you're probably going to lose it. So since I was testing cheap paper, because it's supposed to work, I went ahead and I used a Mead notebook. And the Mead notebook bled on the scrubby. The show-through is much more on camera, but the show-through is not unbearable. With the medium on top, we have a little bit of feathering. We have a little bit of spread. We have no halo, no sheen, no shading. But the spread and the feathers aren't the worst with the medium. It could be so much worse. And this is not bad. With the extra fine, story's different. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 2 seconds to dry. Great student black ink. We got no shading in the scrubby, and if I smear it, I could definitely recover it. And on the student kick, the composition notebook. So with the composition notebook, we have no bleeding. We have ghosting. It's a thin, thin paper. Now when I put this ink down with the medium to put the top up, it is not as black on this paper. It's definitely lighter. That's okay. This is a composition lab notebook. Definitely lighter, but definitely would still work without a problem for students. We have no feather. We have no spread. We have no halo. We have no sheen. We have no shade. But we have a cheap paper that uses this ink fantastic. On the extra fine, we still have no feather, no spread. We don't get any halo. We don't get any sheen. We don't get any shade. It dries in 3 seconds. The scrubby shows us we're not going to get any color variation. And the smear test shows us we will be able to recover if we smeared while writing. And then I went to 20-pound copier paper. And the 20-pound copier paper only has a couple spots that looks like it wants to start bleeding through on the scrubby. A couple spots on the medium. We have a ton of ghosting. This is super cheap paper. Fountain pen users don't get to use super cheap paper, but I'm using Noodler's Bulletproof Black, and it's performing amazingly. With the medium nib that I use to write here instead of the 1.1, we have no feather. We do have spread. We do have spread that's occurring. And again, that spread, while it's a lot of spread, it's going down like a double broad. It's not the worst. Write bigger. Write bigger. You're going to get your problem taken care of. On the extra fine, we have no feather. We definitely have spread. It looks more like a medium. We have no halo, no sheen, no shade. 2 seconds to dry. The scrubby shows us we get 0 color variation. And looking at the smear, you can definitely recover this if you smudge it. This might need to be a ink I always have inked up for when I'm at work, just because they give us the absolutely worst copy paper you can get. What they're after is whatever you can find on the side of the street for free that sat in the rain for a week. They're like, that's perfect. We can make copies on that. Let's hand it out. Let's have people sign important documents on the cheapest paper ever. But this ink will do it. That's all I have for the writing sample.
Instead of finding inks that look like Noodler's Bulletproof Black, I would prefer to find an ink that truly complements its color on the page. I've chosen Krishna's Sindhoor for its being an orangey red color, really bright and popping. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. Now, to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, what I do is I do the writing samples. I then ink it into a different pen and use that for a day. I then put it into a Nemosine Singularity with a fine nib to take my notes for this video. So what do I think of Noodler's Bulletproof Black? It has earned its place as a mainstay in the fountain pen community. The resistance of this ink makes it worth having a bottle. I know I've been through a couple of bottles myself. This is a black ink that I love to use because I can watercolor over it after and it does not move. And it's very dark. So the big question, would I buy a bottle of this ink? Yes. And I've already gone through a couple of them. Thanks for watching.